Greetings, listeners, and welcome to the latest Underrated episode. I am Babs, and for this episode, I'm joined by my co-host Fran and by the wonderful George Pringle as our special guest. I've been a fan of George's music for ages, and I was delighted that she agreed to come on, and she absolutely delivered. So she made the playlists for both the artists that we're discussing today. The theme is 80s synth-pop, and the artists we're discussing are Eurythmics, and whether they're overrated, and the French duo Deux, and whether they're underrated. And you will not believe how many interesting and funny stories George shared about her time in the indie world of mid-2000s England and Europe and elsewhere. But unfortunately, for her privacy, we cut a lot of it out. So I'm afraid to maybe get some of that gossip, you'll have to go and follow her on Instagram and listen to her music. In the meantime, enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Underrated podcast with Fran and Babs. Is it over or underrated?
Welcome to another episode of Underrated, your favourite, hopefully, music podcast with me, Fran, and my co-host, Babs. How are you doing today, Babs?
I am doing good. I'm drinking a bergamot liqueur in orange juice, so all is fine with the world.
I'm drinking weak Ribena.
The differences between us outlined once again.
Last night I had some alcohol. Actually, I had a alcoholic dandelion and burdock drink, so
Ooh,
I'm feeling
fancy.
a bit, rusty.
And yeah, Fran, what music have you been listening to?
Well, I have spent a month listening to most of the 80s.
You have, haven't you?
For some reason, I decided that I needed to work out my top 5 albums of each year of the 80s, and I spent far too long, and no one really cares. So I've done that. So I can tick off the 80s now, the 90s and the noughties. Music-wise, I have discovered a new track from someone we have mentioned on the podcast previously. Do you remember Henrik Delacour?
Of course, we did an episode on him.
Well, he has a new song with Kite, who was Christian Berg from Yvonne. They have a new single with someone I don't know called Anna Van Houseforth, I hope it's pronounced, called Losing, and I highly recommend that. And I have listened to a song on the new James album. Unfortunately, it's called Yummy, which is a terrible title for an album, but but the song on it is fabulous, and it is called Way Over Your Head, and I've listened to that maybe 40 times, but it's by far the best song on that album. How about yourself?
I have not been looking so outwards. I think I've been listening to bands that I know. So I think I've mentioned DZ Death Rays before, the Australian rock band. It's 10 years since their album Black Rat was released, which is my favorite album, and they're coming to Europe. Yay! But not to Belgium. Boo. So I'm deciding whether to travel to go and see them. But yeah, I got obsessed with that album all over again. And then I've been listening to a band I've mentioned lots, but has not featured on any playlist, which is Die Nerven, who I saw, I think 2 years ago, or maybe a year and a half ago. And I got obsessed with that album Europa all over again. So, yep. In the white male rock bands is what I've been listening to. Stuck in the past.
That's like 2005.
2005. But we are not alone today, and we are joined by someone I think far more musical than either of us. We are joined by music producer, artist, and gallery owner George Pringle. Hello, George.
Hello, hi.
How are you doing today?
I am fine. Yeah, I've just been working all day, and now I'm just decompressing with you in a beautiful corridor just outside my latrine.
So glad that you're decompressing in front of a computer in a small room. It's ideal for decompressing, isn't it?
It really, really is. It really is.
Have you been listening to any music recently that you think listeners might like?
Yeah, I mean, like, my problem is I don't really listen to that much new music, which is not ideal, I'm aware. So like sometimes I'm kind of kept up to date because my nieces will make me like listen to all the best female pop stars at the moment. But like I would say, generally speaking, I listen to much older music. So I think today in the gallery I was mainly listening to a load of like kind of krautrock and proto techno and stuff like that. But then like if customers come in and I'm feeling like they're not enjoying it, I just put jazz on. So like I'll be listening to like something like Chris and Cozy or something, or like, you know, Pan or something, and then like I can kind of tell by the customer's face if they're not enjoying it, and then I just put like Billie Holiday on or something. So yeah.
Did you have that tactic, Fran, when you worked in record shops, that you would change the music depending on who came in?
So the rule was the first hour and the last hour we could play anything we wanted. And I remember like we played remember the Horror's second album?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's kind of I remember like I shouldn't say old, like an older lady asked me, what are you listening to? And I thought, oh, here comes the complaint. And so it's a band called The Horrors, because I love it. Can I buy it, please? So I was like, yeah.
Oh, great.
So occasionally you're surprised by the general public. They do buy interesting music. But usually it was like top 10 albums you had to play from like 10 till 4 or something.
I have a really bad story about someone leaving my cafe because of the music. Oh, I think I was listening to Goblin. So I don't know, like, and I just kind of, I don't know, it was one of those like slightly sort of doomy tracks. I don't know whether it was like on the Dario Argento soundtrack. And this woman said to me, I'm really sorry, you're going to have to change the music. And I was really embarrassed, but I changed it. And I went out back, and her and the guy who was with her in the cafe, they just kind of left and didn't pay. So like, they must have been very, very upset by the music. So that's what's made me so thoughtful about all the Billie Holiday, and like maybe like kind of not just listening to what I want to listen to. And yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess sometimes you're surprised someone might come and be like, oh, Chris and Cozy, love it.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. Make a new friend. Like,
well, I mean, you mentioned that you're not always listening to new music. I think I definitely go through phases of like wanting to listen to more new music or not. Fran and I do a best of the year episode every year, and that forces us to really be like, what 10 tracks that we've listened to that have come out this year. So I think that's definitely made me be a bit more thoughtful. But I think that so far this year I've listened to maybe 5 whole albums released.
Well done.
That's probably it.
I mean, that's quite a lot by today's standards, because it's all about songs these days anyway. So like bothering to listen to an album, that's something, you know, someone our age might do.
Yeah, exactly right.
Overrated.
But yes, on that note, we are heading to the past with this week's theme, which I've said is 80s synth pop, and 2 bands of very differing levels of fame. So we're going to start by talking about the overrated act Eurythmics, and then the underrated act Deux. And George, you made both playlists today.
Yeah,
so
I did.
Let's start with you. Are the Eurythmics overrated? Question mark. What did you feel coming in, and how did you make the playlist?
Like I think initially I thought the Eurythmics have got to be overrated, because nobody doesn't know who the Eurythmics are, really. I mean, well, I say that, but at least definitely I feel like I don't know a single person who doesn't know who the Eurythmics are, or Annie Lennox, because of her huge solo career. So initially I think I was sort of thinking that they were overrated, but maybe not in like a kind of really bad way, but just that they're sort of ubiquitous. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think I quite like Eurythmics music, but I've really gone beyond kind of greatest hits exploration, right?
Yeah.
So coming in, I think I thought I knew all the songs on your playlist, although I don't think I knew the first one. We'll come back to that. But I think for me, Eurythmics, it's that thing of their impact was so cultural as well as musical, right? So obviously Annie Lennox being so androgynous, and just before the podcast, because this was a very last minute preparation for me today, I watched the Trash Theory mini documentary. Did you watch it as well, Fran? I see you nodding. And I didn't realize quite, I knew that obviously Annie Lennox had quite a deliberately androgynous look, but I didn't realize, for example, that she performed cross-dressed as Elvis in the 1984 Grammys and things like that. Or we'll come to one of the songs where the video was banned in the US because they thought she was a man. And I was like, wow, okay. So, I can almost separate the kind of musically then, the impact on feminism, and then her work as a political activist, continues to this day. I follow her on Instagram, and she's constantly warning me about everything in the world.
Is she?
Yeah.
You should follow her.
You should really. I mean, it's very depressing because she's posting a lot about Israel, Gaza at the moment.
But
she does it from, I don't know, having read a few more interviews with her. She just seems so straight down the line. Such a kind of like, I want to raise awareness. I'm doing this from a good place and trying to, as concisely as possible, raise awareness. So yeah, I respect her for that, and obviously she has an amazing voice.
Yeah, she's quite an inspiring cultural entity. I think that's the reason when we were thinking about who to think about, I was like, yeah, I think that's a good one, because actually I think they've really sort of paved the way for a lot of artists, really. Like the duo, they practically invented that particular type of kind of thing in a weird way. So yeah, I was interested, but also feeling like, yeah, like the kind of overrated aspect, and is that unfair? That's what I'm really curious about. Is that unfair to, perhaps be thinking in that way about them? Because I do love every single track that I sent over. It was such a joy. The first track that we will talk about is one of my new favorite tracks of their back catalogue, basically. So yeah.
Fran, I think you know more about the back catalogue than I do, because you sent me like a live video from the Old Grey Whistle test for me to watch beforehand. So yeah, what's your relationship with Eurythmics?
So yeah, I had a best of the Eurythmics since 1994 or something. So I knew all the songs on the playlist. And in my 80s discovery, I have listened to 3 Eurythmics albums in the 80s, and I would declare that none of them are great. So I think they are a typical singles band. But I think maybe the problem is that they made 8 albums in 9 years. So maybe, if they maybe released 5, they could have 5 great albums rather than 8 albums with some amazing singles scattered across those 8 albums. But yeah, the first and the last album are really interesting. And that track I sent you, Belinda, it's the first album where they had no hits at all. It was before, the Street Dreams era, when they were still discovering keyboards and still sort of mixing new wave guitars and a heavier sound of some weird experimental electronica. But yeah, I just had a quick look, and Annie Lennox has more Spotify followers than the Eurythmics. So
really?
So I thought, yeah, she's got 20 million compared to 17.
Wow, because I saw that Eurythmics were the 445th biggest band in the world on Spotify. So Annie Lennox must be, I don't know, 400th or something.
But yeah, I mean, I think most people can maybe only name 4 Annie Lennox singles compared to the Eurythmics maybe have 12 massive songs. I'm surprised by that. But yeah, I think you mentioned Annie Lennox and their last album called Peace. The only reason she would tour was if they gave away all of the proceeds to Amnesty International and Greenpeace. So yeah, she's always been politically forward-looking. But yeah, I think Dave Stewart's great. He's done loads of cool videos. He's worked with loads of cool artists. Tom Petty, and I think he co-wrote "Stay" with Shakespeare's sister.
Me neither. Well. Nor Underneath It All with Gwen Stefani. Yeah. The man has fingers in a lot of pies. Yeah, he did.
I really like Dave Stewart. I'm a big Dave Stewart fan. Not in a mean way, less so Annie Lennox, but I think I got, as a kid, did you not get quite fatigued by that diva on the radio and on tapes and stuff? It was just a lot. It was a lot.
Have you guys ever heard the original version of "No More I Love You"?
No. Oh no! Is it good?
Yeah, it's amazing.
I bet it's amazing.
It's an Australian new wave band who supported the Eurythmics, and Annie Lennox said to them, because it wasn't a hit, I want to give it to a bigger audience, so she covered it. But the original version, sung by a guy, is quite different and quite haunting. But you can only get it on YouTube. It's not popular at all I will
Wow. Okay.
I will send it over to Babs to maybe put it on the link or something. But what is interesting, like Babs was in that documentary, did it mention their manifesto?
No, it didn't. I didn't know they had a manifesto.
So the Eurythmics had a manifesto when they got together of yeses and nos. And
it did, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like yes to electronic mixed with Motown, yes to men's suits, no to dresses, metal, and rock. And after every album, they had to look back and see if they had succeeded. And occasionally they hadn't, and thought, oh fuck. So that's why we need to get back to being more experimental. So which I enjoyed. Because basically they had like 4 massive albums from like 84 to 87. And then the last 2 albums are really not commercial at all. And I don't know if you heard anything from Savage Babs, but it's really, 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 really odd. So check it out. So I quite enjoy that they're not a band who just want to enjoy the success and money. But after a while, they just think, actually, guys, we need to go back to being creative. And and also the fact that they haven't done another tour since 1999. I mean, they could easily have done a big money tour, couldn't they? So kudos to that as well.
Yeah. So what is the first track on your playlist, George? And why did you pick it?
So the first track is Sex Crimes 1984, which is from the soundtrack of the film. What's the full name of that film?
I think the film is 1984, but I think the album is 1984 For the Love of Big Brother.
Yeah. So there you go. It's kind of like obviously very Orwellian themed. It is very nostalgic sounding, I feel. How about you guys?
What do you think, Fran?
It's possibly one of the most 80s sounding songs. Alongside Six Butnick, I don't know if you know that band. With like, hey, we've discovered some new effects. Let's have Annie's voice being constantly through it.
Yes,
and Dave Stewart robot impression. There's part of me that every time someone says 1984, I want to put an effect on her voice so we sound like a robot. But
will he do that, listeners? Wait and see.
It's a very odd track, isn't it? Because it's got like a mix of like this like nice like funky pop guitar sort of sounds and some like do so, which is that Motown thing. Then it's got some weird effects happening and maybe overproduction. But I think this was banned also in America because of the title.
Of course,
because you can't have the word sex and crime. How dare they?
Everyone can have guns, but you can't talk about it together in a song.
Even if it's like referencing a fucking film, it's none of my
a book from the 1940s as well. Yeah.
Oh dear. So I've always found this song quite funny at how dated it is, but
I really like it though, because to me it really sounds like my childhood in a bottle now. Like maybe like when I'd heard it when I was younger, I didn't really think about it, but there's something quite sweet and sad, and I don't know, there's something very nostalgic for me about it. I feel like I can sort of like hear stilettos on a London street. Just something like you wouldn't hear anymore. Like I've suddenly developed an affection for this track recently. It's interesting.
George, would you be put off about writing something about for modern day? Like, would you ever put like the lyric 2024 in a song, or sing about TikTok, or mention something which is so now it's gonna be dated in 5 years time? Or
I probably would. Have you listened to my debut single? It's like a time capsule for 2006. It's like MSN and so no, I'm quite a fan of that stuff actually, because it's quite, I think like there's going to be a bleed period of about 10 years where it just makes no sense and seems lame, but then it sort of like becomes more powerful the older it gets, because it is like a kind of time capsule. So I think that maybe that's the effect of this record in a weird way. I don't know how you guys feel, but
I will say that my favorite song of George's is called Physical Education, and it to me it feels like a time capsule. And I think George, I tagged you more than once on the Indie Sleaze Instagram page, just being like, look, I know you were around for this.
They actually have featured me a couple of times, which is quite funny. Good. I didn't realize that is what I was at the time. So now I'll be like, oh, that's what that was called. Being disgusting in your bedroom wearing leggings and an oversized t-shirt is called Indie Sleaze. Okay.
Great. I can market myself like that now. I think I've told you about this Instagram page before, which you should really follow, Fran, because it's very well done, and they have a podcast as well, where basically most of the time it is just posting people's photos of gigs and club nights from that era. So you see the fashion, you see the people, and then it's often like very unexpected because it'll be like, I don't know, like Debbie Harry with Dev Hynes or something like that in some random place in 2009. But I feel like I first heard about the term possibly from that Instagram page in, I'd say like 2-3 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, they've been cooking for about 2 or 3 years. I think, but I don't know, I was just really shocked when I ended up on it because I don't know, I suppose it was a bit of a thing, wasn't it? I just like, for me, it was just very weird to sort of consider myself a part of anything because I always thought I was like this massive outsider. So to suddenly be like, oh, that whole thing, but it was a bit of a thing. And there were more embarrassing ends of it. I would have said that like the actual indie sleaze it's because it's an American thing. They are quite kind of Strokesy orientated. So for me, my experience of that time is more kind of like the bands I toured with and the things I did were more like kind of new ravey. Do you know what I mean? Because in England were sort of more kind of bombastic. I feel it was more kind of like more indie in America. I don't know, like there were just a lot of really not that great bands around as well.
That's the thing, because in the UK you have landfill indie, right? And that's different slightly, even though I think on fashion there's still a bit of overlap. There's a lot of skinny jeans, I feel like, in both.
Skinny jeans, and lots of 80s. There you go, we're back to the 80s.
Back to the
basically.
80s. So with this song, I actually don't know if I heard this song before because it started and I was like, this sounds a bit familiar, but I don't know. Maybe it's because it sounds so 80s that I thought that I knew it. And I thought it sounded very sugary sweet with an edge, but I was just like, of all the bands in the world to get Eurythmics to soundtrack 1984, I'm like, okay, I know they got really big in 1983. And the film came out in 1984, so it's like, I guess, you know, a band du jour, but I'm like, I would go for some, if you want like electronica but darker, go for Depeche Mode or something like that. I think that would be much more suited to dystopian themes.
It's quite up-tempo and dancey. It's like, you don't really think of like Big Brother's watching you when they're do.
But the lyrics are really like weird as well. They're really like slightly sinister, but then it's like sounding really sweet. It's quite clever. Is this like, do you remember Greenskeepers, like it puts the lotion on the skin? Is this like a bit like in that kind of category? You know what I mean? Like it's sort of subverting itself somehow.
So yeah, I was just mostly confused by this song because it was familiar but not familiar, sweet but sour. I listened to it a few times, but I also think like I find it difficult to get over the sex crime because it's like operatic, but it's obviously a horrible word. So part of me is like, you know, you are kind of like making something a bit serious, a bit silly. So yeah, come back to me on that. So what's your next song on the playlist, George?
Right, Here Comes the Rain Again. Have you seen the video? It's like they are like proto-influencers, right? Because he's filming her. You know, like how like you'll get those kind of reels and clips where the girl is running ahead with her hair extensions and the guy's like holding her hand and she's showing him the world, right? This is like that if they were like living on a coast and like they're like, it's like druid themed, isn't it? Like, there's something a bit sort of druid and like, and he's got a big camcorder and he's filming her. It's quite cool. It's aged quite fantastically. I think it is quite, you know, at the time it was probably really like cool, but like now it's sort of, it's fun. It makes me smile. Maybe not for the right reasons. I don't know, but it's quite funny. But I really like this track, actually. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I really like it.
There's some interesting negative effects on the coastline in the video. It's kind of strange that like Anna Lennox seems to be in like Wuthering Heights, and then it's got Dave Stewart with like the most modern 1980s massive camera they could find, like stalking her. I was like, what is supposed to be happening right now?
He's just come over to look at her runes. You know, like...
it's the song is fantastic. It mixes like beautiful synth lines with like actual, orchestration. I think it's
Beautiful.
by is it Michael Nyman, the guy who did the piano. So like it's quite rare in that era to have actual strings with synths, because back in those days they just have a synthetic orchestra, wouldn't they? Back in like 1985 or 4. But yeah, I just love the chorus, like talk to me like lovers do, and again it's got that Motown shawaddy waddy sort of like in the background happening. Shawaddy waddy is that the term? Shawaddy waddy shawaddy. But yeah, I think Dave Stewart said it was about depression. Like he was in New York and he could hear the rain, and he's like, "Here comes the rain again."
But it was Annie Lennox who kind of spontaneously sang that to him when they were just in the hotel messing around.
But then it sounds like it's a love song, isn't it? So it's like I guess the love is to try and get you through the depression, I assume, is what it's about. Maybe.
Guys, is this after they broke up?
No, they broke up in I think in like 1980 before they even started.
There you go. So that's how I was thinking of it, right? I'm just checking because I haven't researched properly. But so therefore I feel like there's something quite lovely about that, the lyrical content of this track with their particular dynamic. It's quite sort of wistful, but like also it's quite sweet because they used to be lovers.
It's such a weird dynamic to be,
it's lovely.
To be in a intense band with your ex for like 10 years and to not like hate each other. Like,
well, although by the time they broke up in the Trash Theory documentary, Annie Lennox was like, we were so sick of each other, we'd lived in each other's pockets for that long, and she was like, we need space, lots of it. And it's like, I can imagine like releasing that many albums in such a short space of time and touring the world as they did. It must be really intense. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic song. I just love the arpeggio motif. It's gorgeous, like almost sends shivers down my spine. I think it's synth pop at its best. I really like the instrumental breakdown in the middle as well. And obviously it is a well-known song, but for me it's not overplayed. Like I think it's not
well enough known. People don't actually think of this track when they think of the Eurythmics, and that's a travesty. Because this is them. This is the distillation of what they are, really, I think.
Yeah, I would say that they're best mixing synths more than their later, more rocky music. I think when they're experimenting with synthesizers back in like 1983, 84, I think that's at their best. And I think Annie Lennox's vocal works really well with synths as well, I think a lot of, like we're mentioning the bands we're going to talk about later on, but a lot of like synth pop bands would have kind of like a monotone kind of like vocal. So it's quite rare to have Annie Lennox having such a gorgeous voice, on top of like a quite a simple synth line. That's quite rare. So yeah, I love this period of the Eurythmics, and they never really went back to sound, as far as I can find out.
Underrated.
So what's your third pick, George?
So I was kind of deliberating over this because like it's kind of similar, really. It's more of the same in a weird way, but it's not. I absolutely love this track. So this is Love is a Stranger, and basically I think it's quite restrained for Eurythmics track in some ways, but for me I think it really hits that sort of proto-techno, goth, industrial 80s kind of stuff. And it kind of just slots right in. And I think it's that sort of, I don't know, it's like a middle of the night record. And it's kind of soft and yearning, but it's also, it's extreme. There's something kind of extreme and slightly unhinged about it that's really exciting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I really like just how high she goes. Like she goes so high, and often that's contrasted with the male grunt, which I always enjoy. I'm all for male grunts. Thank you. Yes, that's what I was about to say. More male grunts in music.
I love panting and grunts.
Thank you. Oh, George, I'm so glad you're here. I feel so.
Okay, good. Do you feel seen? I'm glad.
I feel seen.
I'm here for you.
Fran, where do you stand?
I was going to say in my notes, I said I like the sound of Dave Stewart being punched in the dick.
My God.
I mean, the S&M imagery is strong with
that's kind of their thing, isn't it?
Babs, do you want to mention the video for this? being banned?
Yeah, so I had absolutely no idea. The video got banned in the US because they thought Annie Lennox was cross-dressing, and she had to produce a birth certificate before they unbanned it, which just goes to show how these things, these, prehistoric views continue to this day. I don't think I'd actually seen the video before today. I had no idea.
I've not seen it. Where do you find the video?
So it's on YouTube, and basically the video is Annie Lennox is a sex worker and Dave Stewart is her driver, but she's in like
I've seen this. Yeah, she's back in the taxi. Yeah. And
then she takes off the wig and becomes the man.
Video.
Very cool video. But yeah, I love this. There's something, again, I don't know if musically I'm correct, but like baroque in this. Just again, the exaggeration of the quiet things come in and out. They're teasing you, and then suddenly it goes extreme to then kind of draw back in. Yeah, I really like this song.
I really like that kind of like weird sort of pulsing kind of faintly like high energy thing about it that makes it so nice, like to put in a playlist near things like Giorgio Moroder or whatever. Like, it can kind of move between worlds within a certain mood. It's actually a really versatile track. I really like it, actually. And yeah, I don't know, this is my like on the bus drunk track. I love it. I just love it. Absolutely love it.
It reminds a bit of the Giorgio Moroder did I For Love with Donna Summer.
Yeah,
because it does feel like a dirty sort of verse in that, but especially when she goes, and I feel the, and I
Disco,
I feel love. Yeah. It does have a similarity to it. I think this is a great track, and they only released it after Sweet Dreams was a success, because this was the first single from the album, and it flopped massively, and I thought their career was.
You saw in the documentary, right, that the record label didn't think Sweet Dreams would be a hit, so it was only the 4th single released.
We've heard that so many times, haven't we, in the history of music, when they think that like that song, when the band think, oh, that will be a B-side, it's like the best song of all time,
What's your 4th pick, George?
So this is to contrast, to show you the kind of Eurythmics I don't like, which makes me sound a bit like I feel like I have a fairly sort of like limited appreciation of the Eurythmics, and this track, obviously There Must Be an Angel, it's like one of their main hits, really. I group this in with sisters doing it for themselves, like and like obviously I like both these tracks. I'm not saying I don't like them, but they don't really hold my interest as the other 3 have. So, and I think, like, I was talking to my mum about this, and this was really interesting because I guess my mum was consuming this type of pop as an adult, whereas like I would have been a kid. And she, even though this is the most 80s sounding track ever, like she said she doesn't really like it when Annie Lennox sings too high, and I agree, because she's a contralto, like, whereas the last track she sings high, but it's almost like sort of ethereal falsetto, like it's kind of like around you, it's not the focus. Whilst with this track, I think she has more command in the bottom of her register, and I prefer her there. And it just kind of, and then like I'm not 100% on the Stevie Wonder harmonica, even though it's kind of really original and cool. I'm not 100% on it. I don't know. Anyway, what do you think?
Where do you stand on harmonicas, Fran?
I don't mind the harmonica, but although I do mind it if it's replacing a saxophone. So when I saw Duran Duran in their week period when they had no money, the Rio sax solo.
Yeah.
Simon Le Bon played that himself on a harmonica, and that was not like for like. It was okay, they're scraping the barrel, but I don't mind the Stevie Wonder cameo.
Pretty cool. It's pretty amazing they got him to do that.
It's interesting you mentioned just to do it himself. It's from the same album, so this is literally the album after Sex Crime. And like, it's completely different. This is like, okay, this is a band who want to play big arenas and and broaden their music to the appeal. But I think I had this on like Now 6 when I was like 5, and I think I had it on loop. I think it's also the biggest hit in the UK. This hit #1. The video's interesting. It's got a really strange wink from Dave Stewart at the end. I've got no idea what it's about. Like, what's he up to? But yeah, I think musically, I think it's a side step away from their synth pop. I don't hate it. I think I probably hate more Eurythmics singles than this. But yeah, it's perfectly fine. Babs?
Yeah, this is the one where I feel it's overplayed. Whereas the others, a lot of the songs in this playlist are the kinds of songs that you listen to fairly frequently on the radio, especially, your last picture, which we'll come to. But this one I feel is like the other one that people know that Eurythmics did. And yeah, I don't mind that she's singing higher, though I do hear what you're saying about like, yeah, she really has more control and more strength in the lower register. I don't mind her showing off her chops, but it's very, I don't know, it's maybe a bit too camp and exaggerated for me. And sometimes I like that. But here it's a bit much. And I think also the fact that it's like there's an angel playing with my heart, it's very cheesy as well. So yeah, I'm a bit less on board. I like it. I like a bit more of an edge. But again, I think like you said, George, I don't dislike it. I just don't like it as much.
Yeah, but it's sort of like the sort of, I don't know, it's like when someone's trying to affect the 80s in a film, they might play this track. And like it would be like someone doing their hair in their bedroom to this track with some frosted lipstick. I think in a way it sounds more Eurythmics than Sisters doing it for themselves, but I kind of prefer Sisters are doing it for themselves, if you know what I mean, because it's just got a bit of like poise and direction. Like it's going in for the win. It's like, look, this isn't really a Eurythmic synth-pop song. We're making an absolute kind of like really sassy hit. Whilst this is kind of halfway there. So for me, it doesn't like kind of work as well. But
on Wikipedia, it says that Spin wrote that this was in the tradition of the best MOR pop, reminiscent of Dusty Springfield and Dionne Warwick. And it's like I would actually agree, despite probably not having thought of that on first listen. Like it's definitely going in a more MOR way. Which, yeah, I think I don't know. I think I'd prefer Phil Collins to this.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Finishing with your final pick, George.
My final pick is Sweet Dreams because it's that good. I think we need to end on Sweet Dreams because we need to remember that is the whole thing, really, isn't it? I don't know. Discuss.
For me, a karaoke classic, even though I can't really do the low bits, but it is a fun one. I only learnt today that some of the percussion is played on milk bottles. I did not know that.
That's cool.
Yeah. If you listen again, there is a tinkly
Love
bit.
It.
So, not just drum machines. And yeah, I wrote that this is obviously way more overplayed than There Must Be an Angel, but I just don't get sick of it.
It's just excellent.
It's excellent. It's an iconic music video.
She looks amazing in that video.
She looks amazing, and I think that's it. For a lot of women, it was so influential to have someone looking at that. I think one of the comments on the YouTube video was like, I was living in like the Midwest, like all the girls had like long hair and dresses. I saw that music video. I cut off all my hair. My boyfriend didn't speak to me for 4 days. My dad didn't either. All my classmates didn't recognize me. It's like, that's it. It kind of set off a movement that, still continues to this day. And a banging song, great production. And if you're like a music producer or a tech nerd, really go on the Wikipedia to look at like they really list like this is all the instruments, all the equipment that was used. And you can really nerd out on it as well, which even I'm not like that normally, but I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, they waited in a better, didn't they? Like on nothing, like just he said it's amazing how amazing the sound they could create, just as cheap as anything. He said it's complete punk rock. And I guess synth-pop is kind of punk rock because obviously back in 1981, it's quite weird to have a band who just have synths and no guitar, bass, and drums, and just be creating this brand new music. And like if you listen to it now, it's kind of like a precursor to like dance music with the melody going dum 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 dum. It's like techno, like early techno.
But they're so singular though, aren't they? Because what about Yazoo? No one's talking about Yazoo like this.
Yeah.
Sorry, all due respect, Yazoo. I love Yazoo, but no one's talking about Yazoo quite like this.
Oh, poor Vince Clarke.
I'm sorry. I love Yazoo, but I'm not talking about them like that.
I only know Situation pretty much, so I'm fine. I have no skin in this game.
But I think I love adding Lennox looks. It reminds me of like Bowie in the late 70s about like red hair.
I didn't realize, like I felt so stupid because it's so obvious. In the music video, they are dressed as the record executives that basically told them all things. I was like, I was just saw like some people in suits. I didn't realize that they were in a boardroom. There are records everywhere, and it's like but
there's a cow as well.
But there's a cow as well. And yeah, in the Trash Theory video, they talk about how annoying it was. So Dave Stewart was like, the farmer was really agitated because obviously it was filmed in London and the cow had to come in a lift to the basement. But he was inspired by some French
it was the
surreal
80s,
film.
you know.
It was also the 80s, yeah.
Are you a fan of any of the famous covers?
So I didn't know most. Well, I knew obviously that there's the Marilyn Manson one, which is fine. It's fine because, but
Oh yeah,
a bit reductive. And yeah, let's not talk too much about Marilyn Manson if we don't have to.
No.
But in the Trash Theory video, they do like they put a bunch of them, and the one that I'm most intrigued by is the Ministry one because it's like a metal cover and it's like that drums, but it still sounded. It wasn't just screaming. I was like, there's more to this than screaming, and I want to check it out. And our friend Fran Babs did one, which I don't think I'd realized.
Yeah, because I think this song is like it can fit in so many different categories, can't it? It could be like it can make the goths happy, it can make the metalheads happy, it can make the pop fans happy. It just ticks all the boxes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, this basically saved their career, and we're still talking about it, 40 years later, being a perfect pop song. So a great way to finish.
Yeah. Fran, masterly done. Well done. Great way to finish.
Yeah, I'll be on Heart FM soon, don't worry.
Well, okay, having said that, so George, at the end we then normally ask the question, are Eurythmics overrated? So having made the playlist, having thought about it, what do you think, George?
I don't think they are. Unfortunately, because obviously I love an underdog, for example, but I think their cultural monopoly is really the result of real pop craftsmanship and innovation. So they created, I think what's so interesting is that sort of cold synth poppy sound. The fact that they brought that kind of gospel and soul into that is really interesting, and to more successful and less successful effects. But also, you could argue that they were sort of the prototype for the kind of gothic synth type duo, cold wavy, whatever it is. They invented that, and I think that you can't really basically Johnny Jewel and Italians Do It Better would not have a career without the Eurythmics. Really, you could argue that without that kind of blueprint, a whole load of amazing music wouldn't exist, because I love synth pop duos. That's just one of my things I love.
They've created some brilliant singles, and obviously I love a band who can experiment. Obviously they're great live. They haven't just been pushing the same tour every 4 years to get money, which is kind of brave. But looking at the stats, they've got twice as many Spotify followers as Duran Duran. And are they twice the band of Duran Duran? No, they're not.
These are the opinions of Fran, and are perhaps not shared by everyone on the podcast.
So I think they're slightly overrated.
I have to say, I do feel a bit similar to you, Fran. It's that thing that happens a lot of the times where, obviously this playlist is good. There's only, Sex, Crime, and There Must Be an Angel for me are the kind of the low ones, but the other three are so incredible. And I think to have bands that have such popular music and yet you can listen to it over and over again and still be in awe of it and enjoying it is absolutely no mean feat. But when I saw that they had over 17 million monthly listeners, I was like, wow, that is a lot.
How much is that on Spotify? £2?
Yeah, probably. £2.50, please. They're going up a little bit. I just thought, again, can I call them overrated without knowing more beyond the kind of early 80s stuff? Would I have to listen to it, and then you could have a bit more of an assessment of actually they might have some other areas, like the Belinda that Fran sent me beforehand, where you can have a wider consideration of their entire output, and then would you have a different opinion? I don't know. So I think I'm gonna stay on the fence for this one. I'm gonna say they're probably rated because I think I agree with George on the cultural monopoly and what they invented, but to be that much of a juggernaut, that does surprise me.
Depeche Mode have 13 million.
13? Really?
Yeah, they're bigger than Depeche Mode.
Wow. That's surprising.
But you know what? That doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't surprise me because I love Depeche Mode, but actually I kind of if you've got a sort of short attention span and you like pop music, Eurythmics are way more satisfying than Depeche Mode.
It's true.
And that's me.
But yes, but that's another 80s synth pop episode. We're not here to talk about Depeche Mode. So 3 varying opinions on Eurythmics.
Over underrated.
Do you like music and do you like podcasts? Chances are you like music podcasts. Take this one for example, Pick a Disc. I'm Matt Latham, and every fortnight a guest comes on to Pick a Disc to talk about an album for any reason that they want to. We'll talk about the album as a whole, we talk about the songs, we talk about any personal stories about the album, and if they've ever seen the band live, and all sorts of other crazy tangents. And if at any point any of that made you want to listen to Pick a Disc, then you can find us on your podcast apps of choice or on the Facebooks and Twitters and Instagram under Pick a Disc. We're also on the We Made This Podcast Network on WeMadeThisNetwork.com and on Twitter at we_made_this. Goodbye.
Underrated.
Okay, welcome back to part 2, and we're now going to talk about George's underrated pick, Deux, who I had never heard of. So, George, take it away. Who are Deux, and why did you pick them?
Okay, so they're just like well, they think they formed in like 1981, so we're talking similar time frame in Lyon. It's Lyon, isn't it? I think it's Lyon. So they are French duo from the 80s who made, I think, like, basically there's only one bio for them online, which is on the Minimal Wave Tapes page, basically, and that basically details that Gérard Pelletier had a fascination for making electronic music. He ended up buying a Kawaii research machine or something and trying to make music on the weekends. He'd moved to Germany to buy the machine or something. Anyway, he's very inspired by Kraftwerk, basically. He came back to France, but he was making music by himself, and he ended up meeting this girl called Cathy, who was apparently really cool, because he calls her Magical Girl, going into the kind of like White Striped Kills territory here. Like, are you a couple or not? Don't know. No concrete evidence, but there's some magical appeal between the two of them. They make these really wicked, very cold wavy pop tracks together and sort of disappear until they get reissued at some point about 10-15 years ago by Minimal Wave Tapes. And then he died, sadly, at some point after that. So that's all I know about them.
Yeah, I found out only a little bit more because I found an interview that was republished after he died. So they were interviewed in 2007 by this French magazine called Gonzai, which I've now followed on Instagram. I'd never heard of them before. And they were interviewed in 2007, and it was quite interesting because it went a bit deeper into how they met. And I think Cathy was an artist. They met at a party but bonded over music. And yeah, it's like you say. So yeah, I think he lived in Germany, saw Kraftwerk, got super inspired, moved back to France, lived in Strasbourg, I think, and then to Lyon, where he met her. I think the thing that I found the most interesting was they never wanted to be a live band. They literally said, like, I will say it in French, avant toute une musique d'appartement, nous l'envisageons et la concevions ainsi, which I'm like, I've never heard a band be like, no. Maybe I'm just not knowledgeable enough, but it's like, no, we are going to make music that, you're going to sit in your tiny box apartment and smoke Gauloise. Of course, I'm saying Gauloise for the French stereotype. And yeah, it's just for the music. And I like that, yeah, they said they called themselves Deux because they wanted something simple, because they're inspired by Noy. But yeah, I was very intrigued because I know a bit of French music from this time. So bands that I know from this time, another male-female duo called Cass Product. I don't know if you know them, George.
Yeah,
but they're amazing, and they have music
very,
videos.
very good.
Oh, so cool. Like, she also has like short hair, black and white, even more like intense. Yeah, Fran, I don't know whether you would like it, but you might appreciate, a short haired French girl. Who knows? I don't know. But Cass Product, Ruth, and Taxi Girl were the only bands that
Ruth and Taxi Girl.
They're the only ones like in my mind, and it's like that has come from like, diving into, Spotify at the time and seeing what comes up. So it's like, I like to think I have a bit of knowledge in this field, but yeah, I had never heard of them, and yet trying to find information was difficult. And I saw that they very hard, and they kept getting compared. They were like, oh, they were less successful, Ellie and Jacqueline, and I'm like, who the hell are Ellie and
Jacqueline? Oh my God, excuse me. That is like comparing me to like Kate Nash or something. No, it's like a complete different vibe. It's like Ellie and Jacqueline is like kind of very coy, kind of coquettish, kind of very sort of plastic, kind of like restrained indie pop, right? That has a sort of foundation in something a bit electronic. Deux is like something else. It's just it's like some of the records are like sort of, yeah, they are like sort of proto techno, like literally, like with the last track we'll play, and you're like, they're just totally different. You just can't compare them. But yes, I understand why people are struggling to find something to compare.
To find anything. Yeah, I mean, Fran, did you find anything else?
I probably read the same article, I think, that George did. Was that? I think, yeah, it's
the one article.
Yeah. For one in English. So then, like, I was going through all the YouTube comments, thinking, maybe there's some golden here, but it's like people going, they're good, aren't they? Anything else? No, but yeah, there's very little. Although someone on YouTube did write to Gerard, and he wrote back. Saying that thank you, but I'm not interested in doing music anymore. But it was what it was, and we had some fun, and that was it basically.
So one thing that I forgot to mention. So they made music, I think, mostly in the 80s, and then, as far as I know, kind of not much more. But then MySpace played a big role, because they were like, oh, we can just, he literally said, like, the tapes were just decomposing in some drawers. We can just like get them, digitalize them, and put them on the internet. And they were like, this is all we ever wanted, because he said something like, with the internet, you don't have to record it on big machines. You can just put it out there. Amazing. So I think it got collated into something called Agglomérat, I think. And then, yeah, there were these two different compilations, I think, one called Decadence and the other one called Golden Dreams. But it was really difficult to even find when songs were originally released. Like, Discogs had information for some, but not for others. And I was like, I'm sure this isn't 2010. Come on, guys.
So is there no actual
maybe
album?
He didn't.
No, I don't think there was an actual album. Like, I think
singles scattered across the
singles scattered across, and then the first one that I saw was this Agglomérat in 2006. So yeah, like, I think, when I sent you the document where I put the years for the dates, I'm like, the ones that I put single dates, that is where it was a single. I think there was a vinyl, and you can see it. But for the others, yeah, again, probably recorded in their dingy apartment, waiting for us to listen.
Oh, I love this stuff. Like, where I come from, I get it. I so get, like, not wanting to play live and just wanting to make a whole load of singles in your room, and just kind of not even caring what happens to them. I just love it.
I wonder how many artists would feel more happy being like that, not being forced to do all that. Because I guess for some it's so crucial, but for others,
well, I guess people who make dance music, most of those producers are never going to perform it live, are they? They prefer us to be in their bedroom studio than, like,
but there's also the Mark Ronsons of this world, so you never know. You never know. So yeah, this is all new to us, George. So what's your first pick?
So the first pick is the first track I heard when I heard them, which is Game and Performance, which I thought was a singularly very powerful track, because it just sounds so contemporary and clean, and like, I don't know, I just, it really had a strong impression on me because it was so cool. I was like, how can a track be this simple and cool and keep me, at least me, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but like, how can a track be this cool and simple and clean and just keep me engaged with, like, so few parts? It's so clever.
Yeah, so, like, it's weird when a song has businessman as the hook. Because that line always seems to sort of, like, drive me for some bizarre reason. But I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of male-female duets. I think I've mentioned that before. The voices work magnificently. Can't say that word together. As I mentioned before, like with Annie Lennox, like, this, I guess, was kind of like the way you sang synth-pop back in the early 80s and late 70s. It was kind of like a cool, monotone. It wasn't like big flying vocals. So, it's although one YouTube comment says, I love this, it doesn't sound dated at all. I don't know about that. I think to me it does sound like 1981 to me. But yeah, I mean, for a non-singer, I do love this sort of music because I feel like even I could have a go. It's a bit punk rock, isn't it? Really, as long as you've got you've got a decent melody, you can create something. So yeah, I think this is like my second favorite song off the playlist.
Yeah, I really like how dispassionate she sounds. And when he comes in, I've written he sounds like the most stereotypical Frenchman in the world. I think I was a bit thrown by the fact they sang in English because I mean obviously I saw the song titles, but I would presume. And sometimes it's that thing, especially when it's a language where I'm like, would I prefer this if they were singing in French? By the time I listened to it a few times, I lost that feeling. But at the beginning I was like,
I think their French speaking songs are better.
Mm-hmm.
Personally. I really, really do. And I think it's a real shame that the better known ones are in English. But that's just me. I enjoy French pop, so that's just me.
And I think with this song, with a lot of others, on first listen, I was like, oh, this could have been a bit shorter. It's a bit repetitive. But actually, on repeated listens, I was like, no, actually, I'm in the zone. I'm in the vibe. But it does finish quite abruptly, as do a lot of these songs. Where I'm like, guys, come on, like a bit of a fade out, something else. But yeah, I did enjoy it. And I think listening to this whole playlist, what I found interesting was like they definitely have a sound, but actually the songs do sound quite distinct. Like they never start the same. There's different levels of kind of vocal and synth layering. So yeah, I enjoyed that variety. And well, the next song is in French, George. So I guess you like it a lot.
C'est Paris Orly. Yes, I love this track, and I have something to say, which is that I was listening to your podcast in advance of doing this, so I knew what I put myself up for.
What you were getting into.
And you mentioned something about how in the 80s, everything like Japan was very fashionable, and particularly in France, there's like some kind of a thing. And so this sort of plays into that. Obviously, their fantasy. It's like a track that sounds like, and the video too kind of looks like a couple fantasizing about a getaway to like Tokyo whilst they're by the water cooler in their office, because the video is just like, it's like stock footage of jets like taking off and landing. And someone even commented underneath it to say that he looked like Gareth from The Office. Like, as in, and actually he kind of does, but like, that's kind of like, but it's that kind of crossover, like in the 80s when like, I really love it. Like when the kind of like alternative people dress kind of smart and semi like 40s and things like that, like with the neat collars and the things like that. And so that's why it affects this slightly smart office wear feeling, that video. But I don't know whether that was their actual clothes or they were dressing up, but there's this weird grey crossover point in that sort of style that kind of works. But I love it. I love the kind of like slightly innocent, she's got a very sweet sort of innocent sounding vocal, and it's just very atmospheric. It reminds me of Pictures and Departure by Tony Hymas. Was that his name? It's on that Uneven Paths compilation of that kind of lost 80s music. It's really good. But yeah, it sort of has that sort of vision of travel and modernity. It's an ultra modern kind of song, but it's also very, very 80s.
As a non-French speaker, I was kind of disappointed when I put it through Google Translate, because I think I was hoping for more. But no, it's just like, I got a cab to Stalingrad. I go to Tokyo. I was like, and what else is the song about? Okay, that's it. So yeah, sometimes it is best not to know what it says in English. Yeah, I loved the car sounds in the background and him going, is it 1, 2, 3, communicate or something?
And set me free. Set me free. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, I kept thinking of Ladytron. Must have been influenced by this, I assume.
Definitely.
But it's so cheap and so innocent. But yeah, I've listened to it maybe 10 times today, and yeah, I can't get enough. And the music video is hilarious. It might have like French class when I was like in 1990 with that crappy little like video cameras in the background. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess we can never find out why they chose to do some in English and some in French, because I don't think they wanted to be a big commercial band. So then, why not just sing in your own language? It's interesting.
I guess it's that thing of as if you're a non-English speaking band, I think English sometimes it's like it gives you a like, oh, we're not just your average French band. Like we are international, and he lived in Germany as well, so I'm guessing he might have spoke German, and there's a song coming up in another language as well. Given that I live in Belgium where I literally went to, I might have mentioned this on the podcast even, where I went to an event where it was the very surreal thing of like it was in French and it was in Dutch, and as someone who doesn't speak Dutch, this was like a work event. I'm like, okay, I'm just not gonna understand half of what's going on. But then at one point someone from Lyon was like, I am now going to speak in English to acknowledge that like this is an international event, and I was like, oh my god, so English is really used as like a weapon.
Is it a bit pop art too? A bit like, if you think about sort of, I imagine the kinds of things that like his generation would have been like influenced by, like Godard and whatever, like Karl Marx and Coca-Cola, like kind of affecting that kind of, we're making pop in English is almost like pop art. You're like, we're saying we're part of a sort of capitalist structure of like that. Or maybe they just thought they'd sell some records if they made something in English. I don't know.
Yeah. But that kind of continues to this day. I feel like I definitely I know, like I'm originally from Portugal, and I know Portuguese people who get really annoyed when people speaking Portuguese drop English words into it, like when there is absolutely an alternative. And sometimes, it can be maybe a bit of an affectation, but it's also like, I don't know, we're all on the internet. The internet is very English speaking. Like I hear stories about people who have very small kids who learn English really quickly because they just watch YouTube all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, oh, it's called Paris Orly. I was like, please let there be plain signs. This must be about the airport. And when the announcement of the plain sign came in, I was like, yes, winner. No, I love this. I love the bleeps and bloops that kind of take you out of it. They're a bit disturbing when they come in. This is for me like, I don't know, the French autobahn flying equivalent, and I'm here for it.
Yes, completely.
And absolutely, less environmentally friendly, but still very stylish. And yeah, I made that exact note, George, of like, oh, this is that French and European Japanese obsession.
That slightly annoying, like culturally appropriating sort of melody on the synthesizer, but it kind of works somehow. It works
definitely. So I think we're back in English for the next one. What's your next pick, George?
Okay, well, again, this I feel is kind of, I've done the same problem of like making too much of the same sandwich filling with this playlist, because basically, like as with the Eurythmics, we had like Love Is a Stranger next to Here Comes the Rain. This is like Sex and Trouble. It's got a similar sort of like fullness that propels it to Paris Orly. It's more like, I feel like it's quite cinematic, this one. It's kind of like, it's got this feeling of like car travel, actually, really. Like that's the sort of feeling of it. And it's kind of a dystopian, futuristic kind of landscape. It's quite unnerving, but then it's got really hilarious lyrics. Like when she's like, I am the best and you can see my pretty legs. You're like, seriously? And it really works somehow. I don't know why it works, but it's just, you kind of laugh, but then you start looking forward to that hook where she does this sort of languid, like flirtatious monologue about her legs and her smile. It's very funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys who are in love with her accent and the way she sings on YouTube.
Really? I didn't read the comments.
I think there's a lot of English guys who find French accents
exactly.
Well, French guys as well, because I think on one of the other videos there was this quite perfect comment that had a lot of likes, which was like, oh, it was literally like the 80s French women, and he listed them all. He was like, I was born
How
too
many
late.
were there?
Like there was a lot, and I don't heard of a single one of them. I think, but I was like, all right, it's that thing of like, obviously I perv on men in music, but it's just with men they always go that step too far. It's like you can perv but not objectify. Come on, people.
For me, this is like a disco anthem. I love to be in Paris in 1985 with my knees together, grooving away to this. Like it's a bit more shine. It's got that 80s drum fill. We all had just like a sort of like thing to it. It reminds me of early Depeche Mode and early Human League.
Yeah,
like the sound of the crowd kind of era. Yeah, this is maybe my favorite, just because like I'm really into like synth pop. That I can move to. So thank you for introducing me to Sex and Trouble.
Great track title too, I have to say. Very good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wrote car chase 80s computer game vibes.
Yeah.
Ever since Drive, I feel like songs like this just, bring me back to that. So yeah, very filmic in my mind as well. I quite enjoyed the dueling lyricists, and like I liked the difference from Sex and Trouble compared to Game and Performance, because here, she's much more coquettish, whereas in the first song she's the dispassionate one. But the lyrics are appalling. Yeah, Fran, when you said the terrible lyrics, I was thinking, no, there are some worse ones coming up. my pretty legs, my smile.
I mean, it's just, I think what I really, really loved about it was that thing where you're like, these are so bad, but they're sort of like also so, they work so well because they're sort of wooden. Do you know what I mean? It's like literally just like, it was almost like they went through Google Translate, but what you put in was not that. You're like, no, I didn't mean quite that, but never mind, let's just use it. Like, and I think, I think there's something really charming about it, which sounds patronizing, but it's not meant to be patronizing. It just kind of works. Like, it's almost like when someone sings in another language in like the wrong bad accent, like an English person trying to sing French with a bad English accent. It's sort of charming somehow. Yeah.
Over underrated.
Well, we're moving on to another language with your next pick.
Felicità, italiano. Bene. Okay, yeah, Felicità. This is quite gothic, this, I feel. How about you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Crystal Castles Overload. I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they definitely heard this track. 100%.
Yeah.
They must.
I enjoyed the song, but this was maybe my least favorite on the playlist, just because I think it didn't hook me. With the others, it's like I got the vibes and I got addicted. With this one, like I like the way it builds between the chorus and the verse. I listened to it 3 or 4 times and like I can barely remember it now, I have to say.
Have you seen the video?
Is there a video?
Yeah, there is. The video is kind of cool. They're walking around looking very like new wave, in black and white down the. Well, it might be Milan, but it looks like Paris.
Oh yeah, I'm put on this, and this is like a beautiful computer love song. I just imagine like there's like an atmosphere of like cigarettes and coffee, and then you got these beautiful little sweet little synth folks happening. It's just a contrast in feel. But this wasn't my least favorite. But yeah, again, this is a great song. But my only like if there was maybe 20 songs in a row, would it not be enough? Like, is it all a bit too samey after a long time? Obviously, with a 5-track playlist, maybe it's fine. But I wonder, did they do it? Because I read that they did some songs in the 90s. I wonder if they did, change the sound as they progressed through the years. Have you heard anything?
Yeah, they did. They did. Actually, I probably should have chosen something like Dance With Me or Le Camion, which is like very, very different, like in terms of like, BPM, feeling, tone. So yeah, this is a bit more like high energy, I would say. But yes, they did do more dancey stuff, really, didn't they? Like I'm not implying that they went in a kind of Frank de Wolf kind of direction, but there is some feeling of that, which I think you might feel in the next track, possibly. I don't know.
The next track, which I don't have a year for that one, even though I don't think it is 2013, which
it seems quite different to the other songs, doesn't it?
Well, this is like a reissue or something. Like, did they go back and find some lost recordings or something? That's the feeling I'm guessing.
I think they did for that Agglomérat album, but
So I had never heard of Minimal Wave Records. Is it Veronica Vasiska? Is that a big label I should know about? Like,
it's neat, it's pretty NTS, I would say. As in like, it's quite niche but very cool. They're good very, very good compilations. I can't remember what was on the one that I fell in love with that I found Game and Performance on, but it was they have nice parties. But then like I've seen some like videos and I'm like, oh, this is all stuff I listen to. So I guess like maybe it's just like my special interest area as opposed to like everyone else. Like, I
was going to talk about this later, but I mean we're talking about minimal wave now. Like I think Fran, even though he is like a big 80s head, he'd never heard the term minimal wave, cold wave, dark wave, right? Before we started.
I knew dark wave.
You knew dark wave, okay, but not cold wave or minimal wave. Whereas in Belgium, and again I mentioned this before, there are literal cold wave evenings, and I've been to a dark wave festival.
Oh my God, I
with
need to go to Belgium.
Yeah. I saw Drab Majesty and Cold Cave on the same day. It was great.
Wow.
I never knew Cold Cave were belonging to a different genre.
I think they are a bit more pop, they are a bit more on the pop. Like, I would say more stuff sounds like this.
So would like Henrik Delacour, would he be in that genre?
I think again the sensibilities are he's too slick. I think he's too slick and pop, which is not a bad thing. But
they had these great those the Sound of Belgium compilations and stuff.
Oh
as well.
yes,
so good. And those when I was in the car on the way to France, my brother's a DJ and he was playing like some compilation of stuff that was at Ancienne Belgique, where I've played, and it was loads of stuff I'd already kind of heard. I was like, oh yeah, all this stuff that I've independently kind of liked. I guess it sort of all threads together, but I just haven't thought about it in that way because I've not come in on that angle.
In that way. Again, I do this every now and again. There is a film called The Sound of Belgium, which basically shows how Belgium invented rave culture and rave music through those. So I do recommend it. And it's funny you mentioned Belgium, because in the interview that I read with Deux, when they were talking about like who were they listening to when they got together, they did mention Telex, which is a Belgian band that have this song called Moscow Disco. But Catty is literally like, they're good, but they're a bit too happy. And I was like, right, okay, I can see what kind of band you are. Basically goths. Okay,
they are goths. I think
fair enough.
Safe to say.
But I think the final pick is definitely not your average goth.
No, that's why it's quite interesting. So I threw that in because I was like, I feel like you're gonna have something to say about this because it's a bit of a radical change of pace. Right? Yeah.
Very radical change of pace. I mean, what I wrote was this is like French chanson with 80s synths. Like the way he's singing it feels very old school, and then it goes fucking weird, and Catty is just hypnotizing us, going, everybody dance, and then it jumps between the two, and then it blends together perfectly. And I was like, what is that? Like the first time I heard this, I was like, is George okay? Like what's going on? But by the third listen, I was like, I think this is my favorite on the playlist. Like, I don't know what's going on.
I'm so glad I bent you into my madness. Finally. Like, I think it's great. But then, I did make several very kind of similarly probably beguiling records in my time. So I'm sure people listen to Bonjour Tristesse and be like, what the hell is this person on? So I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. And it almost feels, I would actually say Daft Punky. Kind of the beats and stuff. I mean, Fran is looking politely
definitely.
Like she's absolutely bloody insane.
no, I think the bass line sounds like Early New Order.
Yeah.
Dum, 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 dum. But I think the vocals sound more melodic. That's why I was wondering if it's like later on in the years. Have they changed?
I think this must be later.
Progressed
it has to be.
their singing style. It's got a really interesting change of gear, hasn't it? When it sort of brings out this sinister melodies and it's like disjointed structure. And then it sort of goes a bit everywhere. But it's nice that it's more than the first four tracks, because they all have a thread going between them. And this is like, the ball has dropped and they've gone completely crazy. But that's why I was curious to hear more, because I'd love to know what happened after this. Did they go on another weird direction, or I guess they just vanished?
That Golden Dreams, is it like an EP with the Fam and stuff on? That is all pretty like in this vein. And I don't understand how it came to be. Was it reassembled later when they were doing this process with the tape things, or was it like intact as was? No idea, but kind of interesting, right?
Did they find some demos, I thought, as well, when they re-released those?
Again, all I read was about like the tapes in the drawers. So probably there were things that they'd recorded that they'd forgotten about. But with Golden Dreams, it was released in 2013, which is when Gerard passed away. So I wonder if it was like a kind of final cut. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it was released before or after.
Did he give the green light on that before he died or not? I wonder. How interesting.
I wonder. Even though I think there was this website which is like, Catty is like now the archivist and kind of manager of the music.
Cool.
But the interview from the Gonzai magazine that I read, that was from 2007, and that's where they talked about the whole MySpace and doing the Aglomerat album. And then the end of the episode, at the end of the article, it's like, so is this are you going to do more? And they were like, who knows? And that was it, and that's kind of the end. And it was like, wow, there really isn't very much. Like, I've just discovered kind of from going on YouTube, there is there is like them performing live on TV, Paris Orly, but I didn't see when it came up, and it seems to only have been put on YouTube 6 months ago. But like it's very hard to find anything.
Do you think it's that mystery is part of what's quite exciting about them? I
Definitely.
find it really, really gets me going.
Yeah.
Like, why don't I know more?
Even though I have to say they had more, I was like, oh, I'm sure they're gonna have like, 5,000 listeners. They have 33,000 monthly listeners, which is more than I would have thought for such a mysterious band, but they are on 1 million minimal cold dark wave compilations. And I think, once you start going down that rabbit hole, you get to a lot. And I do wonder if it is more of a Franco-German popular subculture, because I've been to one of the nights, and it is amazing because the night I went to, you have like really old goths, like really old, and like really like dressed. There was a guy dressed as Marie Antoinette, but then also like young queer people and stuff like that. So it's this very like mixed group of people.
Sounds quite cool.
So I feel like it's definitely a subculture worth digging into a bit more.
Absolutely.
So I mean, George, I think we know where you stand on Deux. Fran, Deux, underrated?
Yeah, I mean, for a band I've never heard before, and I've enjoyed at least 4 of the 5 tracks. So yeah, I was actually shocked to see they had 30,000 followers. I thought, okay, this is like a really, really obscure band. So I was surprised I had that many fans on it. Like I thought I'd be looking at 2,000 listens for their best single. So when it's saw 2.5 million, I was like, oh wow. But even without, I still think definitely underrated. It's a shame I can't find much about them. But as you said, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. Like I enjoyed every track on the playlist to a different extent, and I that final track I just thought was so original, because I don't know, I feel like it's much easier to make a track that has 2 very different sounds, but to bring them together in at the end the way they did, where then their voices come together, I think it just kind of represents how close their partnership was as musicians as well. Like, and I'm thinking how in the interview that I read them, they talk a lot about it literally says in French like le feeling. It's all about le feeling. And I think Katy is also an artist as well. So I think she makes visual art.
Where can we see her art? I'd love to see her art.
I don't know. I'm sure maybe you can Google her and she has a website. There's been obscure bands that we've dug up kind of
band camps, as you say, way in it to find more sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me money. My Bandcamp didn't work. One person signed up and I said, I'm so sorry, this isn't working. Would you like your money back?
Oh. They send a CD in the post anyway. Are you a fan of Suicide, guys? I don't know if I've mentioned them before.
Yes, of course.
They've got like 250,000 subscribers.
Well, I think MIA sampled Suicide in Born Free. And I do feel like it's bands. Since she did that, I heard about them a lot more, but I feel like it's a band where more and more people have been referencing as an influence now more than before, for sure. One of those I don't know enough about. Maybe a future topic.
I think they're like the Velvet Underground. Like everyone was influenced, but no one really ever plays them, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've always heard people mentioning Suicide from like Soft Cell Woman's, but we never hear a Suicide song on the radio or on TV ever, really. It's like just a name that people like to mention.
There was that period like during the sort of indie sleaze days where all that was rehashed to death a bit, maybe. So maybe that like everyone's just like, you know what? No one cares about biker jackets anymore. Like that kind of like Velvet Underground, like sleazy sort of like.
Well, again, the film Drive, which is in that period, right? Like the jacket with the scorpion on it, the 80s music. Yeah. But it's all cycles. I mean, I do find it hilarious that kind of the noughties are in fashion now, because obviously because it feels like it was just yesterday.
Yeah, it's interesting anyway, where we've come from. Like that's being rehashed now is quite interesting, because I don't really remember it being that amazing.
Yeah, I mean, for me it's tinged with my uni years. So for me it makes perfect sense, because like literally my uni years were 2005 to 2008, so it's like the prime of all of that. So I'm like, fair enough. But I think if you're a little bit older or a little bit younger.
Well, I think I finished uni in 2007, so it's very similar time frame. But But just for me, like, I think the idea that it's romanticized a lot, perhaps from a feminist perspective, is not really indicative of the experience of, like, there were so many women making music and it was such a cool time for girls, but it kind of also wasn't.
I can imagine that you have some horrendous stories.
Horrendous memories every night. But like, it was just, it was a tough time to be a chick making like electronic music. So to that end, I sort of find the rehash aspect and the utopia of it being this amazing time for like strong women a bit bittersweet. But you know what? It just means we're old.
Yeah. In conclusion,
long story short, like, we're just old now, guys.
We're just old. Yeah, I'm okay with that. We should let you plug whatever you want and say a proper goodbye. So, George, thank you so much for coming on as a guest. And listeners, you will not believe some of the stories that we have cut out of this episode that George has shared. You would not believe the bands that were mentioned that were, absolute staples of the mid-noughties indie scene. So, you're just gonna,
you'll never know.
You'll never know. Go and stream George's music, and and maybe she'll tell you. But in the meantime, George, what would you like to plug? Anything you'd like to promote?
I don't really have anything to promote except for, okay, I've got an art gallery and I make a lot of collage art. So I'm doing an exhibition in September. So if you want to go to my exhibition, DM me, I'll tell you where it is. I just don't generally tell everyone where it's going to be. No, I'm working on a book. Got 2 albums I haven't released, but I don't know how to make it happen. But I will release. You will be able to hear the stuff I made recently, eventually. Yeah. So there you go. That's all there is to it. Keep an eye on the space. Follow my Instagram. Yeah.
at George Pringle TV, is it?
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, and I've got loads of like radio shows and stuff on Mixcloud. If you fancy a really good playlist, they're still there, so you can listen to them.
Very good. And yeah, I will mention again, my personal George Pringle highlight is Physical Education, but my personal George Pringle favorite title is LCD I Love You But You're Letting Me Down.
Yes. Yes, that's true. I forgot that track as well. Yeah, that is true. That was fun. But I'm glad you like Physical Education. That was always one of my favorite tracks too. I wanted to make more bangers, but then I think people got a bit into like the sort of Dear Diary stuff, so I didn't know how to keep everyone happy. I just wanted to do bangers, basically.
Do the bangers. Physical Education is a banger.
It is a banger.
It is a banger, and I think if you like especially Deux, you will like it too.
If you like Dirt and Italo Disco, you'll be very, very, very happy.
And that's the way to finish. Well, however old you are, whatever music era you're listening to, as per usual, support, buy merch, go to concerts, listen, tell the artist that you like the music, that you like it, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for sticking around. Really hope you enjoyed that episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. George was a great guest. You should go and listen to her music. She's George Pringle, and her Instagram handle is George Pringle TV. We are on social media as per. Kind of gave up on Blue Sky a little bit for the moment, I have to say. But we are on Twitter at OU Music Pod, and we are on Instagram and Threads at Overrated Music Pod. You can also email us at overratedmusicpod@gmail.com. And one day I'm sure we will do like a special episode on our favourite duos. There's too many good duos out there. I've just seen Deep Valley live. Incredible stuff. Anyway, see you next time.